Welcome to the Leadership in Law podcast with host Marilyn Jenkins. Cut through the noise, get actionable insights and inspiring stories delivered straight to your ears. Your ultimate podcast for navigating the ever-changing world of law firm ownership. In each episode, we dive deep into the critical topics that matter most to you, from unlocking explosive growth to building a thriving team. We connect you with successful firm leaders and industry experts who share their proven strategies and hard-won wisdom. So, whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey as a law firm owner, the Leadership in Law podcast is here to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to build a successful and fulfilling legal practice.
Welcome to another episode of the Leadership in Law podcast. I'm your host, Marilyn Jenkins. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Jonathan Stark, to the show today. Jonathan is a former software developer who is on a mission to rid the world of hourly billing. He is the author of Hourly Billing is Nuts, the host of Ditching Hourly, and writes a daily newsletter on pricing for independent professionals. I'm excited to have you here, Jonathan. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your leadership journey and getting to where you are?
Sure. Probably the relevant starting point would be in 2003. I was promoted to vice president managing a small software firm. We developed software for clients. We had about 10 or 15 developers at the time. And when I got promoted to a management role, I got access to all of their salaries and I was doing one-on-ones with them and everything. And it became apparent to me that we were losing money on our best developers and making money on our worst developers because we paid the best developers a lot of money and we paid our most junior developers maybe half that, and we billed everybody out at the same hourly rate. And the really good developers were fast and they only had to do things once, and the junior developers were slow and had to do things a bunch of times, so they billed way more hours. And everybody was keeping their clients happy. I was like, wait a second, if we were going to hire people, we'd want to hire junior people and not develop their talents, not teach them how to get faster, not teach them how to get better. And I could not sleep on that one. I was like, wait a second, something's wrong here. And after puzzling about that for about 2 weeks, I finally realized that it was because we billed by the hour. And if we were giving fixed prices of some kind, instantly, our best developers would be super profitable. We'd be getting things done really quickly. It would be so much better. All of the time tracking would go away. There were so many advantages to it. And so that was a massive eye opener for me. But I told this to my boss at the time, and he was like, I understand what you're saying, but what would we transform to? What would we switch to? And I had no answer for that. I just knew that hourly billing was nuts. So I said, all right, I'm going to go solo and figure it out on my own, so I'm not threatening everyone's mortgage payments. And I went off and did that, and it went great. So that was the beginning of I went from being the VP of a boutique software development firm to being a solo consultant. And it was wild. It was so much better to not be billing by the hour. And then people started asking me to teach to them. And that's what led me to where I am now.
I love that. I love that. So I know a lot of people are concerned about going away from hourly billing. What kind of mistakes do you find that businesses and law firms make when they first make that move?
Away from hourly? Yeah. The main thing is that they don't change the mindset of cost plus pricing. So if you switch to time and materials, you might call it. So if you switch to a fixed price from a sort of hourly rate, you will almost certainly not be asking the right questions in the sales meeting. You'll almost certainly not you'll be thinking about scope instead of thinking about the outcome that the client wants. So at least in the software space, what that means is in a situation where I'm going to give somebody an hourly estimate for a proposal, when we first meet with them, I'm going to be asking them about all the different complications, all the features that they need built, all of the tactical things, the small little things about their sort of vision for what the deliverable is going to look like. Okay. And I'm not asking them anything about how does this make your business better? How does this make your life better? If you're going to pay me $1 million to do this, how are you going to be $2 million better off when we're done? And asking all the sort of business questions or personal questions about how this is going to transform their business or life into something that they'd rather have than this big pile of money that they're going to give me. And that is the shift that you need to make when you switch over to, if you're going to do projects, I would say use value-based pricing. And it totally changes the conversation to where you talk to the person, you understand basically what it is worth to them to have your contribution to their desired outcome. And then you would set some prices that are totally fair based on that value to the client. And then then you decide what scope you're going to do. You don't decide what you're going to do before you've even figured out if it's worth anything to the person. So once you have the value from the client, you set a price or maybe 3 options, 3 different prices. Then you come up with a scope of involvement for what you can do at each one of those price points.
Okay.
So instead of if you imagine a doctor scenario, client runs in and says, "Doc, give me a triple bypass." And the doctor says, "Okay, take off your shirt and jump up on the table." And when the client's, "Okay, first cut here and then do this and then that and then sew me up," and they micromanage the client, micromanaging the expert. Instead of that, when the client comes to you, it's like, you need to really understand their underlying motivation, why they would hire someone really expensive like you, because there are a bunch of other options. Why would they pick an expensive option?
Right.
And then it's subjective, but you guesstimate the value of this particular outcome to this particular person in this particular situation, this time frame. You say, okay, this has got to be worth about $100,000 for this person. That'd be crazy if it wasn't. So then you say, all right, for 10,000, what could I do? For 22,000, what could I do? For 50,000, what could I do? And you design a scope of involvement that will contribute more or less to the person's desired outcome based on the price that makes sense.
Okay, so imagine that you've got, say, a messy divorce, and it doesn't start at that, but it becomes that. So you charge a flat rate. Your original scope then would be, if this happens, this is the price. Then we have to, as things complicate, then it's outside the scope. That's a different quote. That's a different price. Is that?
Are you asking me if that's how I would do it?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if because you can start out with a particular problem that you're going to solve for a flat rate, but then wrinkles occur.
So you have to make sure you set your price high enough to account for the inevitable wrinkles. So if you talk to someone and this divorce is worth, you tell me a number. I'm the husband. I come to you. I say, "Oh, I've got to do this divorce." And what would that probably be worth to, I don't know, someone like me or like you?
Look, it's uncontested. It's really inexpensive, less than $2,000. But then those then become contested, and now you've got back and forth. A lot of time is something decides, I want the house. No, you said I could have the house and I could have the beach house. And,
Right.
When things finally get down to the nuts and bolts, that's when it changes.
Yes, that's true. And what you're describing is the scope of your involvement as the lawyer. You're not describing what it's worth to the buyer. So if a buyer comes in and they have no house, they have an apartment, they don't have any kids, they don't have any dogs, they have nothing in the bank, and they just need this divorce done, it's probably worth very little to them, and they can go to probably pretty much anybody. But if Jeff Bezos comes to you, it's surely going to be complicated and be worth a lot of money. Those are two massive extremes, but the idea is that if you build for this stuff by the hour, nobody knows how much it's going to cost until you're done. So you've really never given the person a price. You've only given them an estimate of how long you think it would take. So you're putting all of the risk on the buyer. And if you've ever had the experience of something taking way longer than you expected, you probably noticed that the buyer wasn't very happy about it. And there was a lot of tension in the relationship and they wanted to get it over with. Why is this taking so long? All of that sort of thing. But there's no real risk to you because for every hour that you put in, you're going to get paid. But with no risk comes no reward. So if you have someone like Jeff Bezos comes to you and you say, I'm going to interview him. I'm going to say, okay, how messy do you think this is going to be? And if you've been in the business for 20 years, you could probably tell pretty quickly if you interview the person how messy it's going to be or how difficult they are, your client.
True.
Right? So you can get a sense immediately of probably, okay, this person's a little persnickety. Based on what he's telling me about the spouse, this is probably going to be contested.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money. There's kids. They're fighting. They're already fighting. He's saying mean things about the spouse. So you're like, okay, this is going to be a huge amount of work. So that means that your scope is probably going to be really big. If it's Jeff Bezos, it's probably worth enough that you can set a price that's high enough that you don't care how much work it takes. So you say it'll be $1 million. And okay, it takes you twice as long as you expected, but you're still making an effective hourly rate of $3,000 an hour. Or it seems like here's where it cuts the other way. Someone comes in, it's not worth that much to them. They don't have that much buying power. It's whether it's going to be messy or not, it's just not worth that much to them. So if it's only worth $2,000, like you said, and you can tell it's going to be super messy, in an hourly model, what you would probably do is say, look, I know you only want to spend $2,000, but I'm getting the spider sense that this is going to take, my rate is $500 an hour, $300 an hour, and this is going to take weeks. This is going to take months. I can tell already that this is going to take way more time than you want to spend. So you should probably go to someone cheaper. So you can tell that it's going to be too much. And the person is not going to be happy if you take on that gig unless you get super lucky and some reason it doesn't become a big problem. So there's the cost to you, which is what almost everybody is thinking about when they bill by the hour. They're never thinking of the value to the client. They don't even understand what I mean when I say it. So that is the mind shift that usually causes people trouble when they first shift to fixed prices based on value, is they don't even understand how to think like the client or how to figure out what it's worth to them. So they're only thinking in terms of their own costs to protect themselves from feeling like they're losing money because it took longer than they expected. And really what the problem is, they didn't set the price high enough in the first place. Because I don't know about long-ish legal matters, but in software, a decent sized project will take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. And ask me if there are ever any surprises. Yeah, always, every single time. Yeah. And so what happens when you're billing by the hour is you essentially give them an estimate for the perfect, if everything goes perfectly, the best case scenario, it's going to take me about 100 hours or it's going to take me about 1,000 hours times my hourly rate. And you're essentially lowballing them.
Yeah.
Because if you stop for a second and said, was this going to go perfectly? And you'd laugh just like you just did. And no, it's not going to go perfectly. Well, so then why are you putting this estimate in that's so low? It's not going to be that low. It's just an estimate. It's not a price.
Yeah.
I can't be expected to stick to it. So that's the big shift. And so the trick to growing your practice without hiring more people to increase your inventory of hours, because that's what people think they sell. They think they sell hours. I've only got so many hours, so I need to increase my hours inventory by hiring people and then marking that up. Instead of that, you need to find clients who have really high buying power. They really want what you have, like they really want it. And they don't perceive that there are that many options. Like maybe you're the only option. Maybe you're the specialist for NBA superstars, handling divorce matters for NBA superstars. And you're the only person that anybody trusts. So you can charge a premium. They have a massive amount of buying power. There's no one that they trust to undercut you. And so then you can essentially set a price that's much higher than you would have estimated. It's still a good deal for them. And you end up profiting way more and you don't have to track your time.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. I like the idea of changing your mindset. And as far as the team goes, you're paying your team by the hour. So now you've got to figure out, am I losing money if I do this? So is there a formula, for lack of a better word, just how to figure out, or you just figure it out as you go? Is this going to be profitable? If I say $50,000 for this divorce that has some assets, a house, and maybe kids.
So there's a couple of answers to that. The first is your profit and loss statement will tell you if you're making money or losing money. But I think what you're really asking is, how do I know if I'm doing a good job setting these prices?
Yes. Yeah.
On a project basis. And that phase, especially if you do have employees, that's a phase where you just track the information and you try and get better at it. You're obviously already tracking your time. Mm-hmm. So you could start I would do it on a small project. Somebody comes in with something small, something that's a slam dunk for you. You've done it a million times. And instead of the hourly thing, you say this is going to be $5,000. And you track your time anyway, but you don't send them timesheets or bill them in that way. They just pay $5,000. You probably pay it up front, 100%. You do your thing. And what you might find, this is certainly my experience, the first time I did that, even though I would have told you I was the most efficient software developer on planet Earth, magically, I got a lot faster because my brain just started getting more creative. So it wasn't like I was ever purposely being slow before, but it was in my financial interest, or it would have been against my financial interest to think creatively about what are some other ways I could solve this problem that are outside of my wheelhouse, that are not in my normal like buying a plugin, buying some software instead of me building it from scratch. Maybe this exists somewhere and I can license it. Oh, what do you know?
Yeah.
So instead of a 20-hour project, I did it in 2 hours and I made the same money. And the client was happier because it was done faster. So all of a sudden, when you switch over, you start to get way more productive. And there's another thing about this. So initially, I would continue to track on a project basis for a little while just to see, is this working? And if it turns out that your fixed prices that you're setting are too low, which they almost certainly are because everyone starts out that way. They can't help trying to calculate the number of hours and setting the price based on the hours. It's a hard habit to break. It took me over a year. Once you notice that your prices are too low and it should have been 10,000, not necessarily because any one project lost money, but you're doing the same type of project across lots of clients and the profit margin's not that much better than it would have been with hourly, you're taking more risk. You should be making more profit. So if you say, okay, then let's say these should be 10,000, but no one's buying it at 10,000. That means you need to attract a client that has more buying power, or you need to specialize more so that they see that there are no real options that they would consider other than you. So there's some positioning and marketing that works into this, of being known as a specialist for a particular thing, and then you basically have no competition. You become a monopoly.
Ah, wow, that's awesome. And so your alternatives to hourly billing is flat rate, sliding scale. How do you come up or discuss those alternatives with potential clients?
Yeah, there's basically three main ways that an expertise-based business can price. A lawyer would obviously fall into this, software developer, designers, all these things. And the big categories are, you can sell products, like you could sell boilerplate, you could sell things that are just on your website, people buy them, they download them, you wake up and there's more money in your account than there was when you went to bed. So I'm sure you can probably think of lots of examples in the law space for such a thing. There are even services like LegalZoom and whatever, where you could just buy individual things. I've never used it, but
Sure.
Even in the architecture space, there's like pre-made home plans that you can buy. These are just digital goods that are set at a price. People click a buy now button, they download it, done. So that's probably the least likely thing that anyone listening to this is going to jump to, but that's a pretty common one. It could be a book. It could be some kind of course. Do your own divorce, DIY divorce, something like that.
Okay.
Then there's a middle thing, which is a productized service, which is halfway between a product and what you normally consider that what you do, hands-on service. And this would be something that is a fixed scope, that is relatively fixed scope. I mean, maybe it fluctuates between 20 and 30 hours. It's not going to take more than 30 hours, probably going to take 20 hours at least. And you publish it at a price on your website. And I know a lot of lawyers do this. So like a no contest divorce for $2,000, that kind of thing. That's a productized service where the buyer doesn't know how many hours it's going to take you. They just know that $2,000 is worth it for them. So they say, yes, let's do that. And then however many hours it takes you, or if it takes you 1 hour, they don't care.
Right.
They just want the outcome for that amount. And so that's another way. That one's pretty common in the law space. I've interviewed a bunch of lawyers on my podcast that do that. And that can be pretty profitable, but it can leave money on the table if you have if really wealthy buyers. That can leave money on the table. Okay. So then the third way is what we've been talking about, which is where a client comes in and you're going to make a custom solution for them. And they basically spill their guts to you. You're taking a lot of notes. You're trying to understand their motivations. You're trying to understand the outcomes that they want. You're trying to understand how they see you contributing to those outcomes, what all of that's worth potentially to this person in this particular situation. And then you give them a proposal and say, oh, there's 3 ways we can work together. And that's what I described first. So you figure out the value, you set 3 prices, you decide what scope of involvement you want at each one of those price levels, and then you propose that to them and they pick one or the other.
Interesting. I see that. Yeah. I love the idea of starting with an interview of what would it mean to you to have this solved? It's like sales 101, but again, attorneys aren't necessarily into sales training. So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about technology, or what role does technology or automation play in helping these pricing models? And we have, of course, AI now.
So people know that I'm the hourly billing is nuts guy, and they send me these emails all the time. I have a fair number of lawyers in my audience, and they'll send me these like threads from forums that they're in about people saying, oh, geez, with AI, I did this 10 times faster than I would have otherwise. Do I still charge them the number of hours it would have taken me? things like that without the AI. And I'm like, it just makes my head explode because no,
No.
you can't, because the deal is you're charging for your time. You're not even charging for your tools. You're not like, there's no line item for your laptop or your microphone or your chair or your office rent.
Right.
It's your time. That's the deal. You get to charge for your time, period. So if that's the deal, that's the deal. Now, as soon as and while that's the deal, it makes no sense whatsoever to create boilerplate, to automate anything, to buy a faster computer, to dictate instead of handwrite. None of that makes any financial sense. You should never do anything that's going to make you any faster. And just like me, when I switched over to a fixed price model, all of a sudden your brain starts thinking about all of these new ways that you could save time. Because every time I work an hour in the hourly model, I made $150. But in the fixed price model, every time I work an hour, I lost $150. So I'm like, okay, how do I stop losing $150 every hour? Your brain really gets creative. And things like AI, plain old regular automation, dictation software, boilerplate code, SOPs, all of a sudden, all of these things make tons of sense, the same way that all of a sudden hiring good developers made more sense than hiring slow developers. So all of a sudden AI becomes your friend, because every hour that you save, let's say thing is going to take you 10 hours and you get it down to 1 hour, you got a human in the loop. You can't trust the AI, but still, It's faster to review than it is to write from scratch. If you save yourself 10 hours and you give a fixed price, that's fantastic. It's great, right? So all of that stuff now all of a sudden makes sense. Any kind of productivity enhancements that you can do makes tons of sense.
And it also helps you serve more clients at the same time.
And I've interviewed a bunch of lawyers. One in Oregon was telling me that there's a massive shortage of lawyers, and that public defenders, there's just not enough public defenders. So there's just not enough lawyers around. Okay, what if we could 5x the output of all lawyers by switching off of an hourly model? That's pretty interesting. That's like a very different approach.
It's in different services. If you're going to be using any type of automation or AI to reduce your work, it shouldn't cost the client more money just because you do hourly.
Right.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. How do you approach when someone's asking you for coaching on how to transition a client, let's say a long-term client that's on hourly, to a better pricing model? How do you help do that transition?
That's actually really hard. It's easier to get a new client in the new model than it is to transition an old client, with some exceptions. So if they're a really long-term client and you've got some kind of baseline around, there's some stability to the amount of hours that you're billing every month, then you can switch over to a model where you say, look, I'm sick of tracking my time. You're not even reading my timesheets. It's on average, you're spending about $15,000 a month with me. Let's just call it 15,000. In some months, it'll be more hours. Some months it'll be less hours. And we can revisit it in 6 months and see if we're both still happy with that. And then if you do that, all of a sudden, it might seem like the same thing, but all of a sudden you can dramatically increase your profits, because now you don't have to put in all those hours. You can get creative about how to do things more quickly and I'm almost willing to guarantee that your brain, even though you think you're as fast as you could be now, your brain is going to go, whoa, wait a minute. I'm losing my hourly rate every hour that I work for this client where I'm going to get paid $15,000 no matter what. So if I can get that down to 2 hours instead of 20, great. And the client's still going to be happy. If you're becoming more effective, more productive, and you're still satisfying the client, they are not going to care how many hours it took you.
No, and two, it gives you an opportunity to get more of those clients. So
Right.
not only are you making more profit because you're getting more creative and getting things done faster, you have time to bring on more clients, so you can scale your firm. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you find that once you move over to the flat billing, or however you want to calculate that, are there certain types of work that would still really only be an hourly basis type thing?
Yes, no. So my simple answer to that is I wouldn't take that kind of work. If I thought there was no way to not do it hourly, in other words, if I thought it was so risky that I couldn't possibly calculate within an order of magnitude how much of my effort it was going to take, I would almost say you shouldn't really take on that client, because that means that you can't tell them within an order of magnitude how much it's going to cost them.
Right.
Could be 1,000, could be 10,000, could be 100,000. No idea. Should you really take on that?
Yeah,
It kind of
and that
sounds like you're
kinda
not
moves
qualified to do
yeah,
it.
exactly. That kind of moves away from, say, quote unquote, your niche. You're now taking on a bespoke something where maybe that's not the best client to take. So why would I
Yes.
take that client? So
That's another thing, is that when you do switch over to this model, you'll find yourself getting much pickier about who you work with. And you can do that because you don't have to be busy all the time because your profits double.
what are the
So
quality of life comes into it?
what?
What?
Imagine. And the relationship with the clients this was the first thing I noticed when I switched, was if you had asked me in 2006, January 2006, when I started solo, I would have said that clients are difficult. They're micromanagers. I like them, but when it comes right down to it, there's this back and forth that can be uncomfortable, and it happens every month or so. When I was switching this model, I never expected what happened next. It turns out that actually clients aren't like that. They just don't like having a bottomless pit that they're pouring money into with no idea of how much it's going to be. So of course they start to micromanage you because you keep missing your estimates, or things are later and they're taking longer, or you're not communicating with them. And they just see this money flying out the window. The meter is running with no end in sight. So as soon as you're like, it's going to be $50,000, and if it takes me twice as long as I expected, that's on me, not on you. Why would it be on you if it takes me twice as long? Like, I'm the expert. So that's on me. And all of a sudden, they all calmed right down. Nobody cared about deadlines anymore. All the deadline worries was really about how many hours it was going to take. It wasn't about when it actually had to be done. There was no real deadline, just as fast as possible, but just when it's done. Because all of a sudden, it didn't mean it cost more if it took longer.
Yeah.
And it was amazing for the client relationships because our financial incentives were aligned. We both wanted it done fast, instead of one person wanting it done fast and the other person wanting it done slow.
I love that, the change in the attitude between the customer and you and the customer. That does make a lot of sense. And people just want to know that they're not, like you said, throwing money into a hole that just keeps getting bigger.
Yeah,
So
exactly. That's how it feels.
very,
Anybody that's ever had a bunch of work done on their house knows how that
yes.
feels. It's the worst.
Yeah. And there's always overruns. But why? Yeah, exactly. No, this is really a lot to
Yeah.
think about. I've talked with other people on the podcast about hourly billing and that kind of thing, and how AI plays into going to flat rate. But it's interesting to have a conversation about, like you said, the mindset and where to start. And I think it's perfect for people who maybe are not brand new attorneys, but that they know the process. How long is this thing going to take? What are the pitfalls? And being able to make that transition with new clients, not current clients or old clients. Very interesting. This has been a really good conversation. I really have appreciated you being here. If any of our listeners want to reach out to you or connect with you, where would be the best place to do that?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about value-based pricing, you can go to valuepricingbootcamp.com.
Okay.
And it'll redirect you to my website, and you can sign up for a 6-day email course. It's 6 lessons that's just sent over email. And it comes right from my personal email. You can reply to any of them to ask me questions, and we can start a conversation there.
I love that. And we'll make sure that link is in the show notes. And Jonathan, thank you so much. This has been great.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Marilyn.
Thanks for joining me today for this episode. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do 2 things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, you can connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take the next step with a digital strategist to help you grow your law firm, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to lawmarketingzone.com to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, thanks for listening to Leadership in Law Podcast, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Leadership in Law Podcast. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of law firm owners out there facing similar challenges and striving for the same success. Head over to our website at lawmarketingzone.com. From there, connect with other listeners, access valuable resources, and stay up to date on the latest episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, keep leading with vision and keep growing your firm.